would think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me today, it's the one, the only, Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you?
Doing well, Kyle. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's good to be back. The Flyers are in the second round. Yeah. There it is, right off the top. We beat the
Montreal lead here.
6 games. We're all about it. 3 weeks in a row, we have just gone straight for the jugular in terms of what the lead is on the show. And all 3 times so far, I've forgotten to do the plugs. I'm not going to forget to do it this week. They're behind Kevin on the board, at YWT Podcast on Twitter. Kevin's at Kevin_Durso. The rest of it's all up there. We're on sportstalkphilly.com. You can find us anywhere else you find your podcasts. And that's it for the plugs. So the Flyers are in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
And they will be taking on the New York Islanders. And we know that. But we do want to talk about how they ended up getting rid of the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, well, first of all, that feels good to say. That
it feels good. They got rid of them. And that's what it feels like.
They're in the second round. And for nothing more than the fact that it's just been 8 years. It's been 8 years since they won a playoff series. I mean, and the thing about it,
first time since 2012.
The thing about it being that long is not just that it's been 8 years since they won a playoff series. It's not like they've had chances every year to win that playoff series. It was, it's an off year here. They make it. They go 7. They don't win. They miss, make it go
stomped
6.
by the Capitals.
Make it go 6. And another miss. And after last season, I think that if you would have told anybody after last season the way that everything went, all the changes and all that stuff, if you would have said they'll make the playoffs and they'll win a playoff series, people would have probably said right there, well, then sign me up because we'll take that. I definitely think that there's a level of satisfaction, to this. It's not close to the end goal, but there's a level of satisfaction to making it this far when you haven't in eight years,
A sigh of relief is how I'm
sure.
looking at it. It's crazy to think that the Flyers have moved into the next round and are 4 wins away from going to Edmonton. Like, we've been talking about it.
Yeah.
We're now looking at it. They are now 25% of the way to the ultimate goal here. They're a significant way there. And I don't think, whatever, we beat the Canadiens, blah, blah, blah. If the Flyers end up going on and winning 3 or 4 rounds worth of hockey, this Canadian series will kind of fall by the wayside a little bit because that's how it goes.
Yeah, I thought it was funny because I saw a tweet somewhere that was like, that Pittsburgh series in 2012 was like one of the most talked about series afterwards.
Yeah,
and this is going to be one of the most forgettable. And this is going to be one of the most forgettable ones ever. And it's like, I get it. It's a boring brand of hockey. Guess what? From 2010, nobody remembers the Devil series either. Everybody remembers the other ones that led into it because you remember the Boston series, you remember the Montreal series, and certainly you remember the Cup final against Chicago. Nobody talks about that first.
Devils. Yeah.
Right. But no one talks about that series because it's the one at the very beginning. It's the one that maybe didn't feature many memorable moments necessarily.
Probably the most, it's definitely the most important one because the Flyers were the 7 seed taken out of 2.
Yeah.
But either way, this time the roles are reversed. The Flyers are the 1 seed. They take out the 12 seed Montreal Canadiens.
Which is weird to say.
It probably wasn't as easy as we would have hoped. But honestly, that being said, outside of a blip in game 2, we expected Carey Price to play well, and he did.
He did throughout most of the series, I think. Yeah,
right. You look at the games the Flyers won: 2-1, 2-0, 1-0, and then the doors blow off here at the end, relatively speaking.
Relatively, but even game 6 at 3-2 is not necessarily that crazy.
But it was a high-scoring, dramatic affair by a lot of this series.
Sure,
and it really was a good hockey
these standards.
Game. And it really was a good hockey game. But Carey Price, he had a bad game 6. But before that, Carey Price played a fantastic series, and the Flyers would have, if the Montreal Canadiens had league average goaltending, the Flyers probably would have swept them. Maybe 5, because they played so poorly in game 2.
I think there's something to that, to the 5. I don't know if they would have swept them because I don't think you can come out in game 2 and I don't care who the goalie was in that game. They didn't take a shot for 16 minutes. So they probably don't win that game no matter who was the goalie for the other side. But the other one, I think there's legitimacy to that in game 5, you probably had a chance to bury that team more times than not, and didn't do it then, and that was why I was a little worried about it.
Because it was too close for too long for my liking. I was looking for the Flyers to step on the neck.
Well, and this is the thing. How many times in that game did you think, there it is? There's that moment. It's going, it's going to go from here.
There's the momentum.
Well, they get the 2 power play goals off the 5-minute major. Now they have the lead. You're going, doesn't matter if they gave up the first goal. They have the lead. They can play their game, shut it down from here, right? And that didn't happen. Then they tie it up. And again, it was another power play goal. You're going, oh, wow, power play goal again.
Here we go.
And that, first of all, call me nitpicky a little bit on this, but one of the things that I haven't loved about the Flyers over the years when it comes to, at certain times, when it comes to the playoffs is I watch teams go into the playoffs and every goal is huge magnitude for them because it is the playoffs. You get amped up about it. Guys are really celebrating afterwards, team-wide, not like, hey, crazy fist bump celebrations all over the place.
Everybody's fired up.
But everybody really gets excited when it goes in. Sticks are fully up in the air. Like, everybody's really hyped up. And a lot of times the Flyers would score goals in those previous series and be like, yeah, all right, let's just, slide the stick into the holster kind of move, and let's just go and a couple high fives and let's move on. They scored that third goal to tie the game, and everybody freaked out.
We were having fun.
That was the celebration where you're going, worked hard to get it back, momentum shift again. You've got that spot, and it's a tie game with 9 minutes to go, pretty much. And maybe, it kind of did. I guess it kind of did feel like next goal was going to win it, possibly. And you're going, look who the momentum's on. Look whose side the momentum is on, with 9 minutes left in regulation in Game 5. After all of that, you fought back in the game, and you're there. Now you and I don't care where it would have happened. It could have happened late in the third period. It could have taken overtime. It felt a lot like an overtime game for a long time.
Yeah.
Game 5
and a lot of this series did, right? Like how much of games 3 and 4 felt like next goal wins, right? When you're talking about going into the third period, Flyers are holding on to it, a two goal lead in game is a little safer. But game 4, you're up 1-0 after a goal 5 or 6 minutes into the game.
Right.
The rest of that game, I was on edge.
The 2-0 one for me is the most secure out of those wins, because definitely. The 2-0 game, as soon as you scored the second one, I don't think there was. You
kind of saw the air go out of Montreal.
Well, actually, I know there wasn't to that point in the series. There was not a point in the series yet where the Flyers had a 2-goal lead.
No.
So you went, because game 1 was 1-0, then tied, then 2-1 really quickly after, and you played the rest of the game like that, and they obviously didn't lead in game 2.
No.
And game 3 was 1-0 throughout. So game 4, 2-0. You get that second one late in the second period. That's another thing that was key to me. Late in the second period. So now you're going to play the third period with that 2-goal lead.
Suck the air out of Montreal a little bit.
Every single round robin game they played, I think, was a 2-goal lead going to the third period, and that's why they were allowed to do what they did for most of it. I mean, the key one was obviously I think it was the Boston game, because the Boston game was Phil Myers scoring 8 seconds after they scored a goal, and that made it 3-1. And you played the third period going, just protect the 2-goal lead. Protect the 2-goal lead. How hard? Not how hard can that be? It's difficult, but you're going play your style and who cares if you just don't if you bend but don't break. And as long as you have the margin, you're in a driver's seat, and that's it was the place to be for them in this series for sure.
Right, we've seen them time and time again take a 2-goal lead, force the other team to start coming at them and pushing, and then using that aggression against them and just counterattacking really, really well, getting pucks in deep. And I know that sounds cliche, and it is, and every hockey player hits the get the pucks in deep and play a full 60. But that's what they do. That's what the Flyers have been doing. You get a 3-goal lead in the third period, you get pucks in deep, and then you play a full 60.
I think it was Jake Voracek who did one of those pregame spots on NBC, the ones that where it looks like they're in the locker room tunnel.
Oh my God, those are so bad.
And I think he turned around and said something about all those hockey cliches. That's what we're gonna do. And literally said it like that. Didn't actually use them. Just went. Really, we're just gonna do all the hockey cliches. That's what we're doing.
There's a really great series on there's a really great series on YouTube of the Letterkenny cast.
Oh, okay.
Where they imitate hockey players and do all the cliches, and it's fantastic. And if you just YouTube it pops right up. Speaking of YouTubing and it popping right up, don't forget to check out YWT podcast on YouTube. Yeah. Hello. But either way, that's the good things, right? We beat Montreal. 6 games.
Yeah.
We good, bad, ugly. We got there.
And ugly's a great word for it. I think I said that. I think I used that word probably for about 3 of those games.
And I think you're going to get to use it a lot in the upcoming series.
Yeah. I mean,
I think we're about to see a lot of upcoming ugly hockey with the Flyers playing the staunchly defensive New York Islanders.
It's escaping me who it would have been, I just had I just had a conversation with my dad last night about it, and he was talking about whoever it was on NHL Network, and I wish I could remember who it was. Oh, it might have been Bruce Boudreau, because Bruce Boudreau's been doing NHL Network during the playoffs. Who turned around and said they just going to play this entire series in the neutral zone because that's pretty much what it is.
I have a feeling. I think this series is going to come down to special teams.
That varies. It's a great point, and
a big part of that. And so far, the Flyers have been pretty good at it. Staying disciplined. And there hasn't been a ton in the way of discipline issues for the Flyers so far, knock on wood. Travis Konechny he hasn't kept his mouth shut, certainly, but he's kept himself out of trouble. And
I mean,
I think that's going to need to continue.
Yeah, I ran back and I just looked for a second because they only took 2 penalties in Game 6 against Montreal. Both of them, I don't want to say both of them because one of them, the Phil Myers one was much more legitimate later on, but like the Claude Giroux slashing call, didn't like the call, didn't like the penalty,
didn't like the discipline on it.
Like that's not what should be doing. And
Can't
there was another one. Who was the other one? Oh, Konechny took a cross-checking penalty.
That was also awful,
and that's one you can't take either. But for the most part, they have stayed out of the box, and it was funny because, like Montreal finished. It was kind of trying to not justify, but when Matt Niskanen got suspended for Game 6, which we should mention quickly about that.
We will mention.
We will talk about that because that was part of the fun of the series.
Alain Vigneault is a master.
Yeah,
we'll go into that.
This was really good. But I turned and I said, okay, so obviously the guy who's going to come in to take the lineup spot, not the spot in the lines specifically, like he's not going into first pairing, but it's going to be Shane Gostisbehere.
Slotting in is Shane Gostisbehere, right?
Right. And I turned around and what I tried to make the argument for was, every game this series, there has been significant power play time for the Flyers one way or the other. Whether they've been good at it or not, like, because obviously for most of the series, they weren't good at it.
A large portion of the series.
I mean, basically one game.
Before we mentioned the 3 power play goals in Game 6, I mean.
Right. But I did turn around and even say, regardless, put a guy out there who at least knows how to go back in his own zone when it's cleared out or something like that, gain control, lead it up the ice, and may not, and I say this lightly, I guess, because it's happened before, doesn't turn it over because it's happened before, but like
you're blocked on Twitter.
Yeah, I hear you. Right. Well, I didn't say it about somebody else who does that.
Okay.
He's okay. Ghost is cool. I think, I don't know. I don't think he's much of a social media guy, to be honest. He has an account, but I don't think he's much of a guy.
No, definitely not. I think he's more worried about his Frenchie's Instagram page.
Yeah. Well, I think his fiance has something to do with that. But anyway, so here's a guy, though, who – and a lot of people were talking about, because there was a lot of talk about Ivan Provorov on the top pairing, and one of the changes that should be made is, put Ghost back up there because he was more of that specialist guy from years past.
Sure, that was his – we talked about it on the show. If he's not playing power play for you, he's probably not doing much.
Right. And
was one of the criticisms we had
my point of the thing was that there hasn't been a game in a series where they haven't gotten 8 minutes of power play time.
That's
every
fair.
Single game. And if he's going to play – and he's not going to play all 8 minutes, but if he's going to play 4 of them, then how many more minutes does he have to play?
Right.
Where you feel like you're worried about him being a liability at 5-on-5.
Sure.
And interestingly enough, I don't have the numbers completely. I'm going to pull up that game sheet right now because I want to see for my own curiosity. I remember what his ice time was. His ice time was over 15 minutes, which was very impressive. He was the 4th highest defenseman in ice time behind Provorov, Sanheim, and Myers.
Right. And a lot of that, we talked about stems from the Niskanen suspension. And we heard in the pregame that it was going to be Provorov with a rotating cast. And that was cause for concern. But I think everyone here at the YWT family trusts Alain Vigneault enough to trust that he will deploy his defensemen well.
Well, the way you say that is perfect because of the fact that we were going back and forth before Game 6 talking about how Matt Niskanen was going to be replaced in this lineup, and there was a worry about it because of the fact that Niskanen, they've called him Steady Eddie for a reason throughout the year,
and it's true,
and
he's earned every second of it.
Did he have the best series? No, he had some glaring mistakes in a couple of games that you don't want to see, but at the same time, how do you replace that veteran guy, especially when you're when your option is right? And I definitely didn't and I told you guys in our group chat, I had a little bit more peace of mind with it when Alain Vigneault said it was going to be a committee of people
sure.
filling that role, as opposed to here's the guy who I think is going to fill the role, and he's going to play 20 minutes tonight, and I have to hope that it works.
Right, and I have to hope that, for example, Robert Hagg holds up for the work.
Right, like we were hearing things. We were hearing things about Justin Braun going into that spot to start the game. We're going, oh boy, you want to move a guy from third pairing to first pairing that quickly. I get he's a right-handed defenseman, but you want to move him from third to first.
And I think the big motivation there was not breaking up Niskanen, or I'm sorry, Sanheim Myers.
Right,
they've been so good.
And then
what that forces you to do is take somebody from your third pair and kick them up to the top. And,
right.
And that's why we ended up with that kind of defense by committee.
And what they did anyway later on is they did break them up because Myers took some shifts with Provorov and it
worked out. By the way,
out.
what did Provorov's ice time end up being? Because we were talking about it a little bit in the group chat. When I heard defense by committee, I expected Ivan Provorov to play 45 minutes.
So let me read off
how he operates.
Let me read off a couple to you because of the fact that it's really, really close, which normally doesn't. Like normally it's Ivan Provorov and a bunch of guys who played 20 minutes, right? Like it's Provorov at like 26, and then here's a bunch of guys who broke 20. So Provorov finished with 29 or 24-39,
which is low by his standards.
Lower for him. Yeah,
he routinely is in the 26, 27, 28 range with no problem.
Phil Myers was within a minute, 23-47.
So Alain Vigneault rolled a very deep 6.
Right.
In that game. Wow.
And then for comparison's sake, again, Travis Sanheim was 22-03. So they all played 22 minutes, but nobody played more than 25.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
When does Travis Sanheim take over the power play 1 responsibility? Not this season, obviously. We know this run. This is Provorov's PP1 to captain here, but
probably
does he come in next year and take that spot?
I don't know.
Because Provorov isn't really – he's not a power play 1 guy. He's there because he's their best defenseman, and it's not really all that close.
See, I'm not looking at good numbers for this right now on the Game 6 sheet.
No, I know.
No, for this reason.
Right.
Sanheim on occasion does get PK time, which is interesting. Like it balances him out more, so that's probably why they lock him to that second pair.
But if you put him on power play, but if you put him on power play 1, that frees Provorov up to play a little extra PK time.
Well, Provorov already plays 208. He played 208 of shorthanded time and 443 of power play.
He just play the whole thing. It's fine.
Yeah, he just plays the whole game. Like I mean, it's pretty.
Right. When I suggested in the group text that Ivan Provorov might play 35 minutes, I legitimately thought I was underestimating.
I mean,
did you think I was horribly far off?
At 35, probably. At 30, I didn't think. At 30, I didn't think you were crazy.
Okay, right, because he's done it before. I believe he did it in Game 5 against Pittsburgh with one arm, if I recall correctly. I believe he played a half hour, or Game 6, one of the games.
There was,
I know he played an extensive period of time with essentially one arm because his shoulder was separated.
Yeah. I'd have to go back and find it eventually, but
I know that there was something supremely impressive. He earned a little bit of that Russian machine never breaks splashback.
Well, and do you want to know what? This is a great segue for something I did want to bring up with this, because I remember 2 years ago when they got knocked out of the playoffs. They were
getting their teeth kicked in by Pittsburgh.
But what I remember about it is the way he shouldered it. The guy played with one arm.
And sobbed afterwards.
Sobbed afterwards because he didn't want it to be
over. He let his
and
team down.
Felt like he let the team down in some way. And you're going, are you crazy?
The day that happened, I said something which I have said a number of times since. Ivan Provorov will eventually wear an A for this team.
Oh,
he might be Claude's heir.
Okay, so here's I pulled up the sheet. So
okay,
he did not play nearly as much as we think he did in that game.
Okay.
Actually, believe it or not, do you want to know who your ice time leader in that Game 6 was?
Oh God, was it Andrew McDonald? Because that would explain a lot.
No, it wasn't. It was Shane Gostisbehere.
Oh, that also kind of explains a lot, because that game was insane.
Now, that being said, Gostisbehere played just over 23 minutes in that game.
Okay.
Didn't factor into the scoring, was not a minus for the game, which says a lot because it was an 8-5 final.
You're right.
Had 2 shots, 5 attempts blocked. So he tried to shoot a lot, and they were just getting in the way. 1 missed shot, 2 giveaways, 1 takeaway, 2 block shots. Like, he played an all-around decent game for playing that ice time.
Sorry, you just reminded me of something there.
Sure.
I think one of the reasons I asked about Travis Sanheim playing on power play 1, because I think Ivan Provorov's taking that shot too much.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if that sounds crazy, but I've been watching this power play, and when it cycles to the top, Ivan Provorov's not looking past. I mean, he does, but then as soon as it's open, he's taking the shot, and he doesn't have the shot of Shane Gostisbehere or even Travis Sanheim.
See, and the thing about Gostisbehere when it was really working, and
It was incredible.
Granted, you can go back to this in the next series realistically. If you want to try to trust Shane Gostisbehere for the game you saw in Game 6, which I think was the best game I've seen him play in a long time. I mean,
that's the problem. It's been a long time.
Well, and not only but see, I've seen him play somewhat we had this same conversation after the round robin. It was, boy, he looked good in that Tampa game. I think you got to give him Game 1. And now, see, and here's the problem. I was ready after Game 1 of the Montreal series to get him out of there because I thought you needed size and physicality.
I agree, and I said the same thing. I believe. I
said it
privately. I said it privately, if not on the show.
Right, and they waited until Game 2 instead, or after Game 2. I mean, so they were. I think
I said it in the group chat privately after Game 1, and then I said it on the show publicly after Game 2 because he was still in there. But that's the thing is Ivan Provorov is taking that shot from the top of the circle or from the top center.
So anyway, by the way, Provorov played 20-31 in that game.
Okay. I wonder if he played him. Okay, either way.
And obviously we remember what Sean Couturier did in that game on
one leg.
On one leg.
Incredible.
And also played 20 minutes.
Yeah. That was the old Radko Gudas special for why he was playing on one leg, but either way, back to the current team. You got the New York Islanders. And we're looking ahead, and I'm talking about this game like I think discipline is going to be a huge factor. And outside of one good performance by the Flyers power play, we haven't seen a good power play. Are they over outside of Wednesday night?
They scored in the very first one of the series.
Oh, they did. That was the one. Okay.
Right.
That was
they
the
scored
first goal
on
in that game. Okay.
And I don't know if there was really any others, to be honest. I mean, I can do a
then
quick
it was
check,
poor.
Well, let's put it this way. How hard is it going to be to count how well the power play did when you can count the number? You literally can almost count all the goals in the series for the Flyers on your hands, right?
And there is a little bit of a Carey Price factor.
Sure. So they scored the
there
first
were a bunch
goal
of power plays where they looked good.
Yeah, so the first goal of Game 1 definitely was. And then from there, I think they were 1 for 28 going into that Game 5 or something like that. And then in Game 5, all of a sudden, it was – I think they didn't score on their first power play that game either, first one or first two. They had a couple.
Yeah, that game was the high action game of the series.
All right, hold on a minute. So they didn't score on the second power play of that Game 5 because technicality, Jake Voracek.
They scored 8 seconds afterward.
No.
Oh, that was a 4-on-4.
Yeah, Jake Voracek got called for a 4-minute high sticking penalty 40 seconds into that power play. So they had a 40-second power play. Then they had the 5-minute one in the second period, scored twice, it counts as 2 for 3.
Right.
8-second power play.
Right.
And then they scored. They didn't score on the first one they had in the third period, and then got another one and scored there.
Okay.
And that was where they tied the game.
Yeah, but either way, I think it's got to be.
And then they were got to be better in Game 6 too.
And it's got to be better than that against the Islanders.
And in Game 6, here's the problem I have with the power play. It has nothing to do with the fact that you're going to go 0 for sometimes. It's going to happen.
Sure.
You don't need to be, and you don't even need to go 50%. To yes, in the playoffs you can go 50% relatively easily in a series because you could start out
everything is small sample size,
everything's small sample, sure. Those penalties in Game 6 all came at a certain spot. You got you'd already scored the first goal, you get a power play. Now you have a chance to go up 2-0. You didn't, doesn't matter. Now you're up 2-0. You just killed a penalty. You get another power play and another one in short order in the first period, and you can go up, and by that point I think it was 2-1 again, but you could go right back up 3-1.
You can start to put a team away,
right,
with that kind of back-to-back power play opportunities in the first period.
Montreal scored on their power play in the first period, so we have to take two of the power plays came after it was already 2-1, but nonetheless. And then in the second period, same thing. You had scored the third goal, you gave it right back, so it's 3-2, and again you get a power play. That was, again, an opportunity maybe to make it 4-2 and give yourself some breathing room. They had more than enough chances in this game, even with just 4 power plays, to put this thing away. And, that could have – if the power play clicked in Game 6 the way it did in Game 5 and they scored just 2 power play goals, it's a 5-2 final.
It's much more comfortable. Shea Weber's taking a lot more liberties at the end of the game.
Speaking of which, why don't we get into a little bit of that jousting back and forth with the words and all this stuff. So game 5, let's have some fun with this.
It all starts from Jesperi Kotkaniemi, correct? I believe that's kind of the origin of the actual physical bad blood.
All right. The physical bad blood is going to be from the hit on Sanheim. Yes.
Right. That's kind of where it starts.
That is called a major. I mean, and
what did you think of that, by the way? I definitely don't think Kotkaniemi deserved any sort of supplemental discipline.
All right, so here's what I will tell you about it, because I tweeted something about the Niskanen incident that we'll get to in a little bit from the same game. And I said, I'll say it the same way, because you really didn't see it in the moment. They're following the play, which moved up the ice, and I think Sanheim was on his backhand and just moved the puck ahead.
He kind of just –
and next thing you know, he gets postered against the boards, you know, into the glass. And – so in the moment, you didn't see much. You just heard he was down for a moment.
Right, because the camera had followed the puck in. Right. And you just hear that Sanheim got crushed. So huge hit. I
probably didn't think anything of it. And if nothing else, I think the thing you think of it is, oh, wow, they called a penalty. Okay, something must have happened behind the play. There's a penalty. You're thinking 2 minutes. And then when he started bleeding, and you could see that on your screen. When he turned
around and you see him cut above the eye and bleeding out the mouth.
And the shield is just covered. Right. By the way, his shield's just covered.
Right. So blood spattered a little bit. It wasn't just a nick. Like he got hit hard.
So at that point in time, you start thinking of it. You want to see a replay. And at the same time they're about to show you a replay was about the same time that you heard them say, we're reviewing the play for a major penalty. And once that happened, you started thinking about it. And then at that point, I looked at it because they're actually reviewing it for a major penalty.
Then they show a replay and you go,
and the fact that they said, oh, we're reviewing this for a major penalty.
Right.
You're going, okay. I was surprised that he got game. I thought he was going to get the 5-minute penalty. I was shocked that they kicked him.
Well, so the explanation I've heard of that is once they've decided it's a major, if there's an injury, it has to be a game.
Right. And that's a technicality.
Because they decided it was a major on the hit, and then because Sanheim was bleeding, at that point you've called a major, there's an injury, he has to be gone by the rules.
Right, but I was surprised. I think I was surprised by because
that clarification didn't come out for a day or two, so I kind of wanted to throw that out there because I think that kind of got lost in all the shuffle that followed after with Alain Vigneault.
And I think I was surprised because if they take him off of the ice and they go, he's got to go back. Like they were literally sitting him on the bench. And yes, they were working on him, but
whatever.
Right, if he goes into concussion protocol, if he goes off like something else, a shoulder, something, now you've got something that warrants that. They just lost a player, so now Montreal should lose the player too for the same reason. It's a major penalty and it's an injury.
Right, but Sanheim
sat on the bench and then
was active on that power play.
Yeah, and he was on the power play.
Yeah.
So I that's a little bit much. So that starts everything, and then
you get further
into further into the game, and as Montreal starts to carve out the deficit because the Flyers take advantage of that 5-minute power play, score twice, take a 2-1 lead. Probably wasn't more than 3 or 4 minutes later in the game that they gave it back. That tying goal, it was something relatively close to that.
Right.
I'm going in to look at the box score just to see. So it was a little under 4 minutes. And, one of these players who I saw that – because one of the things I said after Game 6 was if they didn't win Game 5 was if they didn't win Game 6, they weren't winning the series. I really believed that because I thought that there were guys who were starting to heat up.
Momentum
that were worrisome.
Yeah.
And Joel Armia was one of them. And Armia came out and takes that shot from the angle. And, I think – didn't I say it after Game 4? We did the live show after Game 4, and I turned around and I said, oh, Carter Hart hasn't allowed a bad goal yet. And
sure did.
There it was, and that wasn't to say like it was going to happen at some point. So like,
sure, but you said Carter Hart hasn't allowed a bad goal yet, and in the next game he gives up a couple of.
At least the first one wasn't bad. The first one was it's not the first one was bad. The first one was bad for a lot of other people.
Yeah,
you just don't give up a shorthanded goal like that where they literally run a set play on you and split the defense. You can't do that.
I know.
That being said, so after Armia scores the goal, Nick Suzuki's at the crease and just decides, hey, while I'm here, and I really do partially believe him that you have that moment where your brain just clicked off, you're celebrating something. He knows who's there. I'm not saying that part of it, but there's a difference. Well, no, because there's a difference. I think there's a difference between what he did and because Danny Briere did this once.
Right.
But Danny Briere did it like I'm trying to get out of your way and I'm using you as I pushed off.
Oh, right.
Right? Like I got out of your way, like thanks, and tapped him on the back of the head. This was right on the top of his mask.
This was
thanks for
nice job, bud.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And it was at some point it was noticed. And obviously Montreal comes back later on. They score another goal.
Kevin Hayes later said, "Everybody saw it. We all knew that it happened." So I don't know who saw it, but they all knew that it happened.
Well,
very
they
quickly.
they probably all had video later.
They all figured it out very quickly. But yeah, so things really started to heat up there, right? Because you have the Kotkaniemi hit. You have Shea Weber, who's not very happy about it. Shea Weber. All the meanwhile in the background is chirping at refs over every call. He's upset about everything. I don't know if you saw that.
And the game is getting more heated, and
the refs are losing a little bit of control. I will put a little tiny bit of this on the refs for not stamping this out earlier,
which is interesting because to make a call on a 5-minute major and match penalty,
it's often what puts it out.
But feel like, okay, they're taking care of this. Nobody liked that hit. The guy got hurt. He's out for the game. Wow. He's not even here. He's not even here to have to face somebody later.
Right.
Like Kotkaniemi's off the ice. He's gone. And now that he's gone, no one's going to go after him for the rest of the game because they can't.
Because he's got the game.
So you took care of that. But then the Suzuki thing, I think, opened some things up at that point because they knew, and it makes everybody upset about it.
And as the game went on, in a very close series, it was definitely getting warm in there.
And then you get to the final 5 minutes of the game where the Flyers are trying to come back, by the way.
Right, they're pushing.
In the middle of all that, here comes – and again, in the moment, didn't look like much, and there was no penalty called, by the way. So no penalty called. You see, Gallagher goes down, and you're not going to see it on the regular.
And this
part
is
of the
the
broadcast.
actual. This is the actual incident.
But you had to see the replay to even know he was bleeding after that, because there was no way to see it from that far camera that they have that's along the side. The normal broadcast camera. They show it. He's bleeding, and honestly, let's this way. Alain Vigneault is going to make a point that's pretty relatively legitimate because of the fact that he's yelling about it. They didn't call it, and you know what? It reminds me of moments like Jeremy Roenick had moments like this where somebody bashes his teeth in a little bit and he's got the blood's just gushing out of his jaw. He scored some of the most
famous goals in his career with a shattered jaw.
Well, right, but the blood's gushing. It's running between your teeth, and you're yelling, and you literally your mouth is bright red. But you're yelling at the official going, and yet you're looking at the official going, "Did you see what he did? Like, look, I just had 2 teeth pulled out. Like, that's honestly what I think you were looking at when it was at. He just knocked 2 of my teeth out, or something like that. Like, what do you like? You didn't see that? He knocked 2 of my teeth out.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, the next day after that, and it happened. It was like an overnight thing. You woke up the next morning, and all of a sudden when you woke up the next morning, it was the Montreal Canadiens going, look what we have.
Right.
Our camera guy was right in the corner.
We have this tape that just happened to magically catch this.
And not only did we get it on camera, we slowed it down for you to make it look worse.
Of course we did.
Look, fast motion, slow motion, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It looks
bad. It is bad. Let's not say it looks bad.
Right.
It was a bad play.
It's bad, and it's suspendable, and it's got to be done.
Yes. Let's not make any ifs, ands, or buts here.
My progression of the day went from in the moment, doesn't look like anything. Maybe he had a couple teeth knocked out.
And Gallagher's jawing.
Right. To, okay, I just saw that video, and it's slowed down, and he makes the cross-check motion to do that. So that's going to be a game. And then all of a sudden,
if by some miracle somebody hasn't seen this, so Niskanen goes to check him. He goes to do that, hey, F you, check, where he cross-checks him in the side of the arm. Right? You see it every time there's a scrum. A guy cross-checks a guy in the arm to give him the, hey, I dislike you in the current moment. We are disagreeing. And that's all he says.
That's dedication, cross-checking your microphone for emphasis.
Listen, I am a method actor here.
That's fine.
But either way, so you see it every game, right? He goes for the cross-check where he hits him in the arm and, hey, buddy, I disagree with what you have done. And it turns out Brandon Gallagher is very small. And he turns in a way that he's not really expecting, dips his head, and Niskanen really cross-checks him in the jaw.
Right, and it's the classic retaliation. He just cross-checked me. I'm going to go back after him, and he's short.
It's the very classic wrong place, wrong time. Gallagher turns the wrong way. He got caught. But Niskanen still gets a game because you got to be in control of your stick. That's just how it goes. That's just how it goes. And Niskanen sits his game. And Elaine Vigneault makes a couple of very, very funny references to Derek Stepan.
Okay, so let's jump to that because
go for it.
So the game goes on. This happens. By the way, Montreal puts that out there on Twitter. The caption was just "ouch." That's what it said. The caption just says "ouch," and it's a super slow-mo version.
Look at our guy who got hurt. Please tell me somebody's gonna take care of this.
So first they start with that,
but in a French accent.
Then in the afternoon, I assume around the time that the hearing's been had or close to, now it comes out that we know he has a broken jaw.
Yeah, very conveniently, right?
Yeah, very conveniently they just tell us
is going on.
But not only very conveniently around, when that happens, but also to give a specific.
Yeah, in a time of unfit to play.
No, but there have maybe been 2 examples of this, and one of them was a little different than the others per se. Like Jake Muzzin gets carried off the ice on a stretcher in one game. You knew where he was going, and he wasn't going back to the hotel. He was going to a hospital.
Right.
So obviously you're going to give some form of an update that just at least explains, yes, he semi-left the bubble.
He's in the bubble or he's not. In a world of he's unfit to play, sorry, we can't say anything more. It's interesting that when a flyer is essentially on trial, this piece of evidence appears.
Right. And it's
interesting how that works.
And for what it's worth, it's really interesting that now we can talk about all 3 of these specific injuries that have come out or mentions of this, and all 3 teams are out because that's a Toronto player who got taken off on a stretcher, goes to the hospital. His team's out. Yep. Tarasenko leaves for St. Louis. They tell everybody he left the bubble. He's going back. It's a complication with the shoulder injury.
They told everybody it's a shoulder.
Yep. He's going back to St. Louis. He's not here. Which I assume was a way of telling people, stop asking about him.
Don't expect him to play.
He's not going to be back for this series. Right. Because even if he comes back to the bubble, he's going to have to sit inside again.
Right.
So
don't have to do the 4 tests in 4 days.
Right. And now they're out of the playoffs. And Montreal goes ahead and drops this one, which is, hey, he's out for the rest of the series. See, and even that was fine.
It's a clear message from the NHL. Don't tell people why your players are hurt or you're losing, kid.
But here's the thing. I'm fine with Montreal saying he's definitely not going to play for the rest of the series. You didn't give a reason. You know,
right.
like
we all saw he got hit in the face. We know.
Right. You can turn around and sit there and say, look, he's unfit to play, and he's very he's probably not playing for the rest of the series.
Composite stick to the jaw. We get it.
Like, let's do it this way. You're making that announcement the day before Game 6, and Game 7 was 2 days later. In 3 days' time, is he going to be okay? Probably not.
No. It's a pretty easy statement to make, and it's designed to kind of ruffle some feathers and fire up some news.
Right.
And we saw some of this in the series, right? We heard Elaine Vigneault talk about Montreal putting their power play unit out up 5-0 in Game 2, and we heard Montreal respond. And there's been a little bit of gamesmanship. There was a little bit of gamesmanship.
There was definitely
a little bit of media play.
Well, let's put it this way. So
like each other very much.
Let's kind of go into that for a minute, because here. So first of all, I do think this plays into the decision-making process. So the video's out there. Kirk Muller, who is filling in for Claude Julien as the associate head coach,
right,
says, we have the video. We sent the video to the league, and the video will show, and the video shows what it shows. So we expect them to handle it. And in all seriousness, fair response to an extent.
Sure.
The only part of it,
be political, and here you go.
Well, no, but the only part of it that I don't think anybody should like is, we have the video, which wasn't on a broadcast, and we sent to league. If everybody else saw the same thing,
Bill Belichick had the video of that practice too.
So, but other than that, everything else is fine. Like, to sit there and have your comment be, we saw what we saw. The league hopefully will take care of it.
We just hope the league does the right thing.
Right.
That was the vibe of it. We know what happened. We just hope the league vindicates our story or tells the truth.
Right. And the only thing about it to me that really is bothersome is that this is your own guy who, luckily for you, is planted in that corner. That's about it.
Right.
Other than that, I've got nothing for you. Like, if everybody else saw it, and let's put it this way, it's not like that was talked about 20,000 times on the post-game shows with a clip like that.
And no, the only thing that went around was a GIF.
Right. Like, if they had
and then all of a sudden the NHL Department of Player Safety video comes out and they have full stop motion video.
There was not a good camera angle from the broadcast that really showed you what happened, in my opinion.
Nope.
And yet when that happens, like, if there's a good angle, then they will show that 20 times on the post game and say
medium
maybe
angle.
that gets them. This is why I said I went to bed after game 5 and was like, did all the stuff I have to do after a game. There's nothing more to say here. And I woke up the next morning and all of a sudden it was, hey, did you hear Matt Niskanen's probably got a hearing coming because
I didn't know it was happening until I saw the news for a hearing. I didn't even
Right.
realize that there was calls for a suspension or supplemental discipline or anything along those lines.
So now let's go into the comments because so Kurt Muller says that and says, oh, the video shows what it shows. The league will take – we expect the league to take care of it. Then gets asked about the Kotkaniemi play and goes, good hockey play.
Yeah.
Fine, whatever.
Which that line has been a little bit of a meme around the league
Then
this
Alain
postseason.
Vigneault comes out. Conveniently, by the way, this happened after Kirk Muller's availability and throws back the good hockey play line where he says it's just a hockey play.
Right.
And
Alain Vigneault is a master troll. He has to have a Reddit account, right?
And then turned around and did. That was the first time he mentioned something about how well his jaw seemed fine when he was talking to the refs afterwards. So, whatever. And of course, Mark Bergevin takes that and the next day comes back out and says, that's really disrespectful to say, like if someone's going to be hurt or whatever. And Alain Vigneault comes out and then drops I can only state the facts. He got up and he didn't shut up for 5 minutes.
And that is exactly what Brandon Gallagher said when asked in 2014 about if he was expecting a suspension after breaking Derek Stepan's jaw in a very similar fashion.
Right. So a very what goes around comes around kind of thing.
Right. So
6 years later, but still.
Brandon Gallagher, just to break it down for people here, Brandon Gallagher breaks Stepan's jaw, says that after the game. Well, he was yelling about it for 5 minutes, so his jaw can't hurt that bad. I'm paraphrasing.
By the way, led that comment with, I've seen broken jaws before. You can't talk like that afterwards. So
right. And then
did the same thing.
Alain Vigneault comes around and goes, oh, really? It's interesting that you say this. Because he was, by the way, Gallagher, after he took the shot, for what it's worth, I'm not doubting the medical judgment, but for what it's worth, he was talking a lot. He was quite, the antics were up there on the way out.
So now you've got the bad blood flowing at this point because by the way, game 5, the other part of game 5 we forgot to mention is that right at the end of the game, Montreal scores an empty net goal. They're going to ice the game, and Sean Couturier collided with Arturi Lehkonen.
I saw the word bulldozed used, and listen, I just need to no, that's not a bulldozing. Relax.
No. Here's what happened. He's skating back towards his bench probably, and Lehkonen turned to go back to his bench to celebrate the goal and just got run over.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't an accident.
He wasn't looking that way.
It certainly wasn't an accident. Let me clarify.
Right,
but Sean Couturier did not bulldoze Arturi Lehkonen.
Right.
They collided.
Nonetheless,
Sean Couturier failed to avoid the collision.
Yeah. So nonetheless, they get up. Now they're going.
People asking for a suspension for that. Get out of my face.
Well, yeah, that's ridiculous.
Get out of my face.
So they get up. Now they're going to go at it a little bit. Here comes Shea Weber. Jake Voracek sees this. He wants in on it. So he just jumps onto the pile and grabs onto Shea Weber. And
I think he realized who he grabbed after he got there.
Maybe. But do you want to know what the really funny part was to an extent? There was a clip and someone turned around and said, what a nice guy Joel Farabee is for congratulating Philip Dano on his empty net goal because he literally goes over there and hugs him like as if to say, I don't want any part of this whatsoever. I don't think you do either.
Keep me really far away from Shea Weber.
And here, let's just act like we're together on
that. That was certainly a hey, please keep me away from Shea Weber.
Right, because it almost looked like they laughed about it. Like Dano went right at it, like, yeah, sure, let's do this. This is great.
Because a couple different times in the series, Shea Weber was trying to play Big Brother in some piles. He was trying to pull people apart, and he was trying to get himself where he needed to be. And towards the end of Game 6, as the buzzer is kind of approaching in Game 6, Shea Weber threw a little bit of a hissy fit.
Well, so here's the deal with this. So obviously the Suzuki thing with the head pad of Carter Hart wasn't forgotten for a couple of reasons. First of all, Suzuki was heating up in the series. Of course, he was the one who scored the game-winning goal in Game 5.
He's going to be a good player.
He's going to be a star, I think.
He's going to be fantastic.
He's going to be outstanding. And so he scores the game-winning goal in Game 5. He then scores the 2 Montreal goals in Game 6. And the other part of it is that he did have a moment in this game that I like to call "keep your head up, kid" moment. Because Shane Gostisbehere leveled him with his head
Ran
down.
him over.
I mean, just
one of the better hits of the series.
Good clean hit, shoulder, and the official said it right away too. That's a shoulder-to-shoulder hit, and he just flattened him. And Suzuki looked like he had no idea where that even came from because he was too focused on what was going on in front of him on the ice.
One of the best hits
straight
of the
down.
series. Yep.
But anyway, so after the game is over, now Suzuki's in the middle of that pile because
time is right.
Because
3, 2, 1. Time has just run out.
Time has just run out, and for the most part, because they iced the puck with 10 seconds left. Nate Thompson wins a faceoff, pretty much gets it to the corner, and is just going to try to play protect. I'm going to pin this against the boards. I don't want it to come out, whatever. And it does come out and go into the crease as the horn sounds. I mean, there was less than a second left probably when it moved that direction.
Scrambling for it. Montreal got a little bit of a chance there right at the end. They did get a decent little push.
Sure. And when it pushed that direction to the crease, Carter Hart stayed right there on top of it and just throws his glove on it and gets out of there. That's it. Horn sounds. And it was really cool because one of the first things that happens is Carter Hart dropped his stick, came out of the pile and pumped his blocker hand.
Yep.
He kind of pumps like, yes, we got out of this. Nate Thompson puts his arm straight up in the air like, thank God it's over.
Right.
Like, we did it.
The Flyers are celebrating.
And they're the only two I can see that are really celebrating. Everybody else's body's in the crease because it went that direction. So they're all barreling down, and mainly right in the beginning, they're just trying to get out of there. Everybody, like Montreal, looks
extracting themselves. They know the horn went off.
Well, and not only that, but Montreal looks exhausted. The Flyers look exhausted. It's like
been a long
battle, trying to catch your breath. Game's over. It is what it is. And then all of a sudden, Derek Grant steps in and gets retribution and starts patting Nick's. And the funny part of this clip is he looks and realizes, oh wait, that's number 14 on his helmet. That's
I know
Nick
that
Suzuki.
kid.
Oh, wait a minute.
We have a score to settle with that kid.
What a time to do this. Game's over. He's right here. He's on a knee right now trying to get back up. How about I just go ahead and gave him 2 or 3?
Good series, bud.
And Shea Weber loses his mind, slashes at him, throws a punch at him. Suzuki tries to come around the pile, and Carter Hart goes to him.
I would have lost it. And
took his catching glove hand and gave him a little shove, like
watch your
knock
space,
it
kid.
off, kid. Which is weird for him to say if you were talking.
First of all, Shea Weber has probably got 8 inches and 60 pounds on Derek Grant.
I
mean, Derek Grant's not small, but Shea Weber's enormous.
Derek Grant's a tall dude.
I don't know. Shea Weber still has the size advantage on him. It certainly looked like in the moment.
It might be. It's close. Shea Weber's not as tall as I think we all think, but
that's fair. He's just
he's heavy.
Right. It's all about that slap shot.
Shea Weber is 6'4", 230.
Okay.
And I believe Derek Grant is actually close to that. Derek Grant is 6'3", 206.
Okay.
So height-wise, they're pretty close. And by the way,
got a little bit of a size advantage here.
And by the way, Derek Grant is the type of guy, or not the type of guy, but talk about a picture of what you want to see from a guy after you do something like that. Takes care of it, gets Shea Weber to lose his mind, and looks across and just flashes that smile, tooth missing, or I should say tooth missing. Half of his front teeth are missing. He's got a whole side that's like gone on the top, and that smiles, and he's just smiling like, and he even gives one of these like, what are you talking about?
So I know he wasn't on the team when this speech was delivered, but I have to think he's gone back and listened to AV's "Be a Bleepin' Flyer" speech once or twice. Because, man, I don't know about you, but I listen to it every once in a while just to get me pumped up.
It's on the we talked about when they started doing the home ice thing.
It's in
the opening video.
It has to be.
It's outstanding.
I know we've talked about this before. If the Flyers finish the remaining 75% of this journey, that speech goes down in history. That's
this year. I mean, that's this team's version of win today, walk together forever.
It's not quite that, but I think it's
not Blackboard material, but
I think it's this team's version of Hungry Dogs Run Faster.
Okay, that's a little bit. That's fair.
And I think we kind of see a little bit. I'm doing this completely. I just thought of this.
Mm-hmm.
I see some similarities between this and that Eagles team from a couple of years ago.
A little bit, yeah.
A little bit. Hopefully our top player doesn't go down and we have to replace him. But, listen, we've had some of that. But that underdog mentality, the Flyers are sitting here as the first seed, right? Like the Eagles were the first seed that year. But you're still underdogs, right? The Eagles come into their first series and they're not favored. the Flyers were, but, there were a lot of people who gave Montreal a shot.
You know what? But you know what, though? Are the Flyers really favored in that first-round series if they're playing anybody other than the 12-seed
Probably
Montreal
not.
Canadiens? Like, if you're playing Columbus, do you think people would have sat there and said, Columbus isn't the team?
And maybe, that's what I'm saying.
Like, maybe it would have been closer. Nope. Like, let's this way. I saw numbers from something predicting an extra round. A lot of people like the Islanders.
A lot of people. A lot of people like the Islanders.
And I don't know. I think that's a good thing.
Well, while we're here, what do you got? What do you think happens in this series, right? We haven't really talked much about the Islanders, but it is mostly about that system.
I know, because I reluctantly put a prediction of this series into the group chat yesterday because I didn't really want to touch it, to be honest. Because at this point,
I was antagonizing a little bit.
The one thing I will say about this at this point is that, and we can talk a little bit about the rest of the series around the league to an extent in this. I think that you are pretty darn close to, if not exactly, down to probably the best 4 teams you can find in each conference. Close to.
Yeah, honestly.
I mean, definitely the top 2 teams in the West went through, as they should have.
And the top 3 in the East.
And,
based on what we've seen here.
Yeah, probably. And I mean,
the Flyers were only 1 point behind Washington when we paused, and then played significantly better than them in the round robin.
Right.
And then won their first round series. It's kind of hard to say that the Flyers aren't a top 3 team in the East.
Right.
It looks like the top 3 teams in the East have gone through.
Yeah,
sure.
I think so. And that's why I'm trying to say, like, I kind of want to lump the Islanders into that a little bit and say, like, not in the top 3, but I'm saying they probably were a top 5 team in the East this year.
Probably.
I mean,
maybe
there wasn't
6, depending on, when we're looking at it.
Well,
things fluctuated a little bit. Depends on where Toronto's
and that's true
at.
because one of the things, because I just posted this morning a storylines piece for it, and outside of a couple of other things that we can get into about this series, one of the things was that, like, I tried to look at the regular season numbers and things like that, and I turned around and even said both teams are going to come into this series in the playoffs, in the playoffs as we know it in bubble life, at 7-2. Both teams have won 7 games. Both teams have lost 2. No changing that.
Right.
At the end of this regular season as we know it, let's call it that, the Flyers were 9 out of 10 of their last 12, something like that. It was like right.
Yeah.
And the Islanders were like 2-7-4.
Okay.
So they came in went into the pause about as cold as can be, and then have come out of it and are now 7-2 in their last 9.
Well, and I think it's all tied together, right? We talk about the system.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everything in New York, everything on Long Island runs through Barry Trotz.
Sure it does.
And
this is an elite coaching matchup again.
Right. You speak to the system they play that's just so suffocating. You just shut down the Washington Capitals and made them look bad.
Yeah.
You talk about the fact that they've come out of the bubble, or they've come into the bubble and just look like a totally different team than they left the season. Man, Barry Trotz is good.
Yeah, he is. And
Barry Trotz is really good.
I don't know if there's there's time for this to change, I guess, because there's another series going on while the Flyers play the Islanders. But I don't know if I've seen the best game you can see from Boston or Tampa Bay. Like the Tampa Bay Columbus series for a 5-game series was very close.
That was a great series.
Well,
it was very close.
2 games go to overtime. One of them was a 5 overtime. Columbus did win a game.
Yep.
And, that right there, there's 3 games that you could swing in either direction, right there. And then same thing with Boston. Boston won game 1 in overtime. So that was a close one. And I do think a dynamic of that series changed when Svechnikov got hurt.
Absolutely.
And they lost a key player. And not only that, but they lost a key player. I think let's just say if there was a team that was left, I'm trying to think about it because even Columbus got better goaltending than that. Like, I think if there was one team that was left that had a weakness in goal, it was Carolina.
Yes.
Out of the 8 that were there in the last part of this, in that first round, Montreal had Carey Price. Columbus had Korpisalo playing out of his mind in the early part of the series. He looked worse as the series went on, possibly from wear and tear from that first game.
Sure.
But he was good for most. I mean, at one point in time, he was the guy who was next in line behind Carter Hart and Carey Price with all of the main goaltending numbers. Definitely. Whether it was volume of shots, because he faced obviously a ton in game 1, but save percentage was high. Goals against was among the lowest. He had won a lot of games. I mean, everything. And so you had that. Who else am I thinking of that was also in the series? Probably. Tampa was
Tampa's
playing
got
Columbus,
Vasilevsky.
and
Yeah. There's good goaltending all
there was
over
another.
these
I mean,
playoffs.
I can't remember it off the top. Oh, well, no. And the Islanders are playing Washington, and Holtby's still good. I don't think
Yeah.
Holtby was terrible in the series, but he wasn't the
No.
best one either. I still think
that was more the offense of
I
Washington.
still put
rather
Holtby
than Creighton
above. I still put Holtby above whoever was going to go and goal for Carolina. Mrazek
Definitely.
or Reimer.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
it didn't matter.
And Reimer played really well.
Reimer did play really well, and I was
Mrazek really didn't. I don't know why. Reimer didn't get more time in that series.
Really quickly in those first round series, you saw former Flyer goalies go from looking really good in that early part of it in the qualifiers to looking like the way we remembered them.
Oh, so they did the Flyers thing. Got it. Where you come in and you look good for your first 5 games and then you blow up. Yeah, we know how this works. I've watched too many goalies.
Peter Mrazek turned, because at one point in time, I can't remember which goal it was, but I turned around and I tweeted during one of those games like, wow, that's the Peter Mrazek I remember from the Flyers. And believe me, I remember goals like that.
Every single day, I'm terrified that Carter Hart's going to turn into Steve Mason, where we got one good year out of him and now he's done. Mm-hmm. And every day that he doesn't is a gift to me.
I mean, and
but then you look at the Islanders' goaltending. How much of Semyon Varlamov's goaltending success is him, and how much is the system, and how much is Barry Trotz?
It's both, because because I do think there's an element of him that when they are going really well, he's in his zone.
That's fair.
So he's feeling good right now. I don't think there's any question about that. He's feeling good about himself right now, and there's something about this series that really, really caters to the Islanders, and that is the at minimum one back-to-back that's going to be played, because they've never had a problem going from, honestly, Barry Trotz for about 80% of the season, and let's put it this way, what did we complete? 85% of the season?
Right.
No, went Varlamov, Greiss, Varlamov, Greiss, Varlamov, Greiss.
They don't care.
He would not start a guy in back-to-back games, period, no matter when it was, because he just
insane.
kept rolling those two. They got almost equal number of starts, and it wasn't until close to the very end that he really went to Varlamov exclusively. But nonetheless, I think you'll see both.
I'm sorry, those games are 4 and 5. The back-to-backs in the series?
I'm sorry. 2 and 3, and then
early.
6 and 7. If it goes that
far. We're hoping it doesn't get that far. But give me that prediction.
I said Flyers in 7.
Okay.
Which is, certainly, I mean, and I
don't know if my heart can handle that.
I don't love it either. I will say this. The reason where I was trying to go with this is that I don't know if we've seen Boston really put it all together completely yet. And there's guys who have missed some time. And in some way, they're doing well. The Tuukka Rask news, and they're like, and it has yet to hurt them, I'll say.
Yeah, and Yaroslav Halak has stepped right in. And
Halak has stepped in, and I knew he could. I'm not saying that I downplayed his performance at any, or thought he wasn't going to perform at any point. I'm saying that he's not the Vezina finalist, though. So at some point, he just hasn't looked poor, and I don't know if how much of that is, Carolina just lost. First of all, Carolina lost a key offensive player.
Svechnikov was a really big blow for them.
And then Boston kind of did the same thing that you have to do, like all these other teams had to do. You just shut them down. You take away some of the opportunities. Your goaltender doesn't have to be crazy spectacular.
And we talked
a solid game.
We talked a little bit about how bad Boston looked in the round robin games. Turns out when the games
they impressed me.
Turns out when the games count, they turn it on.
They really impressed me. And then and then Tampa Bay's got a really good goalie. It's not that. I just wonder. They got locked in a lot of tight games, and I think that they are vulnerable. Tampa Bay is playing really wide open.
One thing we should mention, at time of recording on Sunday morning, we have just learned that Steven Stamkos will not play in Game 1 of that series.
Yeah.
And we don't know how long he'll be out, but he will not be playing in Game 1.
He hasn't played yet, right?
Right, but they haven't. Even Columbus isn't Boston in terms of.
No, I agree with that. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying so far he hasn't played yet, and he's still not available yet. And
if you have the Flyers in 7, who would you prefer the Flyers face if they move on?
Prefer?
Just off the top of your head. We don't have to go deep analysis here because we got at least 2 shows. But.
I picked Tampa Bay to win the series, and also in 7, by the way.
Okay.
I think
that series might be the best series of the playoffs.
So.
It's got potential.
So weirdly enough, and look, I'm not going to sit here and complain that the Flyers are the number 1 seed out of the round robin, but here's where I'll go with this, and this is all I'm saying. Even in a year where they reseeded after every round,
the division still ended up in the second round.
Well, no, it's not even the division still ended up in the second round. Because I could care less if the Flyers are playing Washington in the second round or the Islanders or whatever. Honestly, I could care less about that. But the like the kind of the consensus number 1 and number 2 for most of the year are still playing in the semifinals,
second round.
conference semifinals. Like
even in this crazy
right,
24
like, even in a
team
situation
5-round bubble format.
Because let's be real. Let's say there was no reseeding up for grabs and everybody wins the way that they were supposed to. Then the Flyers aren't playing the Islanders now. They're playing the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Oh, Tampa. I'm sorry. No, they'd be playing Boston, wouldn't they? Because they would
No,
have been the
nothing,
4th seed.
If nothing changed. No,
Well, yeah, Boston came in as the 1 seed and the Flyers came in as the 4 seed.
Yeah, but then Boston would be playing the Islanders.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
I'm taking Washington out. And I'm saying let's not change anything with that and say it's still 1, 2, 4, 7.
Right.
But no changes to the round robin teams the way that they came in. Now Boston's playing the Islanders and Tampa's playing the Flyers.
Man, that would be some fun series.
And realistically, what could end up happening is that 1 and 2 could face off in the conference finals the way that they probably should.
Right.
Typically,
I agree.
And that's what I'm saying.
I take it you're a 1 through 8 guy.
I like it better because of the fact, and I only say
That's
I like
fair.
it better because of the fact that you have, especially on the Eastern Conference side, you've got the most competitive division that's out there, and you've got also the 2 clear-cut top teams in the conference, in my opinion, just on paper.
The other division,
in terms of consistent talent, whatever, and consistent performance. In the other division, that
In the same
always sit at 1-2, and not just always sit at 1-2, but typically Boston and Tampa Bay, whatever order they're in, because it's been back and forth over the years.
right?
The number 2 of that grouping or of that pairing has more points than the number 1 of the next division, which is the most competitive division.
That's fair.
No,
I get it, and I'm also a 1 through 8 person. I just kind of I picked up on a little bit of hint, and I wanted to get that little information out.
Well, I mean, let's put it this way: I'm also like that because of the fact that
it's what you grow up with.
Well, it is, and the Western Conference is just a mess to me too, in a sense, because like the only thing I'm glad about with that is at least 1, 2, and 3 made it forward, and you're going like about the only other thing I would have liked, and obviously it was way too far past it to be a concern at this point, or like to think about. Is I probably wouldn't have minded if Edmonton's the other team in there. If you were going to go with somebody who was outside of the top 4.
Right.
Because to me, if you would have sat there and said Vegas has got to play Edmonton and Colorado's got to play Dallas, then I'm sitting back and, where's the chips?
I'm staying up till 1 a.m. a lot.
Like exactly. And I do the Colorado-Dallas game 1 last night was good.
Oh, yeah, it definitely
was good.
I saw a little bit of it.
Yeah, so like it's good. It's going to be a good series. I still have Colorado in 6.
And I still have Dallas in 7 there. I think that's a 7-game series. But no, we're not going to go deep into all the other series.
No. I'm just rolling through it.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I do like Vegas also. Like I really believe that I think that the top 2 from like and now like the reseeded way, not the previous. I think the top 2 really can come out of both of these.
It's going to be a bloodbath on the way in, and we talked about Cinderella stories and blah blah blah. The only real Cinderella left is Vancouver.
Pretty much. I mean, Vancouver's a more. We talked about Vancouver a little bit, and they're underrated. Their goalie does not get enough credit.
Jacob Markstrom is
credit at
probably top 5 in the league.
This year.
I'm not talking resumes. I'm not talking career.
No, I know.
I'm talking right this second. Jacob Markstrom is probably top 5 in the league.
Yeah. This year to me, he was like honestly.
He will get when the full voting list is released. I'd be willing to bet he got several 2nd or 3rd place Vezina votes.
I think
I'd be willing to bet he was high on a lot of ballots.
Not that it's going to be a crazy number, but are we also, whenever this stuff comes out, are we also curious to see if Carter Hart got any love in that category early on?
I'd be willing to bet he got a couple of.
Like a 4th or a 5th, and
5th place votes, but probably nothing. I don't expect him to get.
No,
much.
I know, but
because his season was relatively medium. He had enough big ugly stretches where it's kind of going to take.
Let's put it this way: the votes that we know the votes that matter when award season rolls around, and we want to see the number of 1st place votes that guys like Alain Vigneault and Sean Couturier get
those are the numbers we're crunching.
Because we know for a fact that. Well, not
they're
for
finalists.
A fact, but we know for a fact they're finalists. Yeah, and like I don't want to say we know for a fact who voted for what, but I've seen enough arguments go both ways in favor and against, like for people who voted for or for against, that tells me there's 1st place votes for both of them somewhere out there.
Sean Couturier.
It's just a matter of how many.
I think there's a real chance that Sean Couturier wins the Selke, and I'm not going to sit here and say should over Bergeron or O'Reilly. I think there's a chance that he does, just kind of given the buzz I've heard out of media outlets with votes.
I mean, let's put it this way too. I mean, Alain Vigneault's not the last one standing in that Jack Adams right now because Bruce Cassidy's still alive at this point. But I will say, like John Tortorella, I thought was his stiffest competition. I know it's a regular season award, so it doesn't factor in. But he's not coaching actively anymore. Like their season's over.
Well, how many Jack Adams votes do you think Todd Reardon got?
None.
So. Again,
I don't think people were.
This will be news that you've probably heard by the time the show comes out. But about 15 minutes before we hit record, we got the word that the Washington Capitals have fired their head coach Todd Reardon. Did you hear fired or resigned or stepped down, or did you hear a terminology?
Fired.
He was fired. He was canned.
Yeah.
So obviously they are pretty disappointed after losing to the New York Islanders. And have decided that in the 2 years since they won their Stanley Cup with Barry Trotz, that hurts.
Okay, so
that he has not done well enough, and that he will be relieved from his duties, and someone else gets to coach Alexander Ovechkin in his last season
under
on his
contract
current
for
contract
right now. Yeah, so here's a couple of things.
Which is a big deal.
So first of all, let me pull up the statement that the Capitals made because there's a
we've heard some great team statements this offseason.
Well, because there's a key phrase in this that kind of tells you why this happened. No, not that one. It's not.
That was my favorite from John Chayka.
It's not as juicy as that.
Not as spicy as that.
No.
Okay.
No, but it says we have higher expectations for our team, and we felt a fresh approach in leadership was necessary. So that's what the first line of the statement says.
Interesting. That means Ovi doesn't like him. Let's get someone new.
It might. Okay, so a couple interesting things I'm seeing right off the bat. Okay, so multiple interesting things I'm seeing right off the bat then. First of all, Todd Reardon apparently at some point in time in his prior coaching career, before he was the head coach of the Washington Capitals, had some time on the Pittsburgh bench as a power play specialist, like not power specialist, but running the offense and power play. And there was a thing here that says Sidney Crosby kind of liked the way it was when he ran it, and they just fired all their assistant coaches. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets a call.
Do you think he takes a step down?
He might. Let's this way. It's much more acceptable now than I think it would have been earlier.
Right. I mean, we just saw the Flyers do it with
the Flyers have
Mike
two.
Yeo and Michel Therrien.
Let's just say the Flyers have two. How many still? Let's even just do it with the ones who teams that are still in the playoffs right now. The Flyers have two former head coaches outside that are assistants. Dallas has John Stevens behind the bench.
Yep. Wow.
Coaching. Who's a former head
Phantom's
coach.
legend.
Yeah. Right. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else who I can think of off the top of my head.
Former Phantom's captain.
Yeah. Right.
He might have been the first Phantom's captain.
Let's put it this way. And I know it's a crazy reference to go to, but even Dave Haxtell took that step and was an assistant coach.
I don't think Dave was getting any other calls.
No, but interestingly enough, someone joked that he doesn't get a. I don't think he's getting a call for this job. By the way,
we're talking about these guys, and there's been kind of a long running joke that there's 30 NHL jobs and like 36 guys who can fill them. Because there's just no turnover, right? How many times has Claude Julien coached Montreal?
Right.
So we're starting to look at this group, and Seattle's not that far away. So is Todd Reardon a Seattle guy? Does he go sit on an assistant bench for a year and hope that Seattle calls him? Like, I think, because that's what I think a lot of these guys are doing, by the way.
Seattle's going to figure it out sooner than that, I would think. So here's the thing. It's Seattle's going to make up their mind quickly, depending on who's a free agent probably after this year's coaching, whatever.
Well, and I think a lot of current NHL teams are about to lose an assistant coach because we just talked about all these guys with coaching experience on their bench.
So listen to this for a moment.
Yeah.
And granted, some of the names I'm going to read off on this list were more experienced than when they took the job in Washington. Okay. But so here's the list of coaches during Alex Ovechkin's time in Washington. Glenn Hanlon, it was his first NHL job.
Oof.
Bruce Boudreau, his first NHL head coaching job at that time. Now, obviously, he's a vet, though.
He's put on a lot of games. Put on a lot of years since then.
But when he started, that was his first NHL coaching head coaching job. Dale Hunter, first NHL coaching job. Adam Oates, first NHL head coaching job.
And another former Capital, by the way. Right. That's two.
Barry Trotz, his second NHL job. Now, granted, I say
First
second
one was
lightly.
Nashville,
The
correct?
first one was Nashville for like
For like
8
a
years,
long
though.
time.
So like I don't really.
So it was his second job, but he had time.
Right, and then Todd
and
Reardon,
experience and success.
and then Todd Reardon, his first NHL head coaching job.
So I wonder if you're going to see somebody who's got a little more
experience is going to be a key.
I wonder if Mike Babcock's in Washington.
Ooh, okay. See, I had another one for you because New Jersey hired Lindy Ruff. But by the way, the Metropolitan Division has become the place for legendary head coaches because you got Barry Trotz, Alain Vigneault, Lindy Ruff, John Tortorella. You know, how much
Rod
more
Brind'Amour is going to get there.
Rod Brind'Amour is working his way there because he's been great. I mean, how many more teams am I missing?
He's a Hall of Fame player, and he's already done a phenomenal job.
I'm missing the Rangers because the Rangers have David Quinn, who it doesn't have that kind of resume. And then I think,
but they're rebuilding. He might not be their guy,
right? And then I'm missing only a couple others because one of them's Washington now, who doesn't have a coach, so we have to wait to find out who it is. And
I think Mike Babcock makes a lot of sense.
It could
because there's enough veteran leadership there that I think the team will be comfortable hiring Mike and Mike's reputation.
They could. I could see some
because there's enough veteran leadership in that room already.
Yeah, and
Mike might not be able to play his game.
And oh, by the way, the other coach that I left out was Mike Sullivan for Pittsburgh, who has two Stanley Cups to his name. So who
just got all his assistant coaches fired.
Yeah, I hear you, but at the same time, what I'm trying to get at is that
but
how many cup winning or cup finalist coaches are in this division?
Cups. He's got two cups like Matt Murray has 2 cups. He's been here. The team won in spite of Mike Sullivan. Right? His 2 cups are the exact same 2 as Matt Murray's, and I don't think either of them are particularly responsible for said cups.
So
they belong to number 87.
So anyway, that's a good name. Babcock is a good name.
I think Babcock makes a lot of sense. I might be the first one to say this.
All right,
Babcock to Washington.
Okay, do you know who I think has a shot that I thought of immediately?
Okay.
And it's going to be interesting with Ovi, but I'm interested. Peter Laviolette.
Okay. I think, man, I would be surprised if Peter Laviolette doesn't go to Washington. I think he's going to be coaching the Kraken.
See, I could see that too, but I do think. The only
thing about that is I don't know if he wants to coach an expansion team at this point in his career.
Another
he
name
might just retire.
Let's just say another name that comes to mind that's I believe is still a free agent at this point because I can't imagine he got fired this year and I don't believe he got rehired yet. Gerard Gallant could be a good one too.
Okay, yeah, I saw a lot of people saying that he was going to be the Andrew Burnett of this current expansion system, and he was going to go from expansion team to expansion team. I've seen him in the Seattle running pretty heavily.
If they have time, that's the thing. I don't know if they have time. Washington needs a coach now, and Washington's gonna make a coaching move that's very much Alain Vigneault to the Flyers.
It's time to
you're
win.
You're going from this. Well, not only that, but you're going from this first timer to we can't play that game. We've got to get a guy who's done it.
Right. And they need to get somebody they can't get somebody who it takes a couple of years for their system to set in. They need to get somebody right this second.
Right.
Because we touched on it a little bit. Alexander Ovechkin is entering the last year of his contract.
Yeah.
The last year of his contract. And their cap space isn't too bad. They have a couple people falling off the books. They have somebody going to Seattle. There's things that they can do. They're not really in a ton of trouble cap-wise. But it's not the easiest situation. And Alexander Ovechkin, man, if you're looking for a way out, you got one coming.
Right. Now, here's another list I saw in a tweet about potential candidates to replace Todd Reardon. And it says there's 4 good ones still behind benches in the Eastern Conference bubble. So I feel like you know where I'm going to go with part of this.
So we're talking about Mike Yeo, Michel Therrien.
Well, Michel Therrien is not on that list, but Mike Yeo is.
Okay.
Alain Lambert, Joe Sacco, and Todd Richards are also listed in this tweet, which they touched on just about every other team. But Mike Yeo is an interesting one. And you had to start to think that at some point that if the Flyers have really good success and there's coaching vacancies, they're going to get phone calls.
Alain Vigneault knew that was a possibility when he asked Mike Yeo to step behind his bench. Same with the other one. I'm blanking on his name right now. But
Mike Yeo and Michel Therrien.
Michel Therrien, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's a possibility when you're bringing in guys with NHL experience behind your bench as an assistant coach. You know that if you have any sort of success, they're going to get offered a head coaching job, and they're going to take it, because why shouldn't they?
Well, sure. And it's why, like, it's funny because, like, I sit there and I say Dave Haxtell's out there too, but as an assistant, but like, I don't think anybody wants anything like that right now. And I don't think he fits the bill of what Washington wants for sure. Washington's going to want.
Definitely not. No.
And see, it's weird because I wanted to, just after we were talking about it, sit there and say, oh, you know what? Then I'd probably lean more towards Babcock or Laviolette, because they're going to pick somebody who I think has won a cup before. But then again, I sit there and I go, the Flyers wanted that experience, and they didn't pick a guy who won a cup. They picked a guy who got there a couple times, because who needs it, but also who got there a couple times and then said, wait a minute, all right, like, I've got something left to coach for. I want to keep pushing here. So that's why
Gallant run faster.
True, but that's why I like Gallant there then, maybe, because Gallant's been to a final.
He's pushing, and I think Gerard Gallant is a better coach than he's been treated by some of his former employers.
Who else did this happen to, by the way? If Gerard Gallant were to take the job and coach for the team that beat him in the Stanley Cup final as the next coach there, didn't that happen to somebody else?
Imagine if Gerard Gallant goes to Seattle and then beats Vegas in a Western Conference final his first season. Oh my
God.
That's it right there. That's the drama.
Wasn't this not that we're going to get into this topic per se, but I just wanted to throw this out there.
And then he'll beat Florida in the Stanley Cup final, because why not?
I don't know, because I know you listen to this sometimes too. I think a recent topic on the Steve Dangle podcast was something about
Steve Dangle. Never heard of him. I don't know what you're talking about.
Should be this should we be either concerned, or is it concerning that Vegas has had so much success?
No.
Well, I agree. I
know.
Well, no, because here's the thing. Is it concerning? No, the only time it was a problem to me was maybe when they made the Cup final as an expansion team out of that year. But I also thought about it, and I'm like, you had people wheeling and dealing with them then, that, you let these teams play
Florida
a game where
screwed up.
Well, yeah, you let these other teams play a game where they said, oh, we'll trade you blank if you just don't take this guy.
Yep.
And
we saw that burn Florida with Marchessault and Riley. Bad.
But should we be concerned about it or upset about it or whatever? I'm like, no, because you know what? They still went out and made the trades to get Mark Stone and Max Pacioretty and guys like that. Like, they did the work.
And you know what? The thing is, it's good for the league that Vegas was good right away. It's great for the league that Vegas was good right away.
Well, it's great to get a new city that
fired up and into hockey,
right? That just embraces this, and I think that
Seattle is prime for this.
Seattle's prime for this because Seattle already
left 2 decades ago.
Seattle already has the record on Vegas for how much merch they've sold since this whole thing kind of.
Well,
not to mention the fact that the branding's cool. Like, the branding is really sick.
The branding's great, but think about it. Vegas was never a sports city in the way that other cities are sports. Obviously, sports run through Vegas in terms of gambling, but Vegas was never a sports city. Nobody ever thinks about the people who live in Vegas and you don't think of those people as sports fans.
Yeah, well, because
Seattle, you have a sports base. You have the Seahawks. You have the Mariners. You had the Supersonics. Their soccer team, the Sounders, incredible numbers. Yeah. We've heard for years about the Seahawks getting the 12th man. Seattle might be a better hockey city than Vegas is.
Well, and here's the thing too. Seattle they have that WHL team. The Seattle Thunderbirds are out there too. And it's not.
There's a couple teams out in Washington.
Look, does the CHL draw like the NHL? No, obviously not. But there's got to be a group. But there's got to be a group of people out there though who are a part of that little base that will now turn around and go, there's a pro team too. And what happens if one of their guys? What happens if one of these drafts that come?
Carter Hart played in Everett, Washington,
with the first. Right, but what if exactly? Yep. So what if one of these picks that like Seattle makes down the road in a draft turns out to be first round pick? Let's just say early on it's like 5th overall because they'll get a high pick in their first draft, right? Like it always happens that way.
I have a feeling Vegas got screwed a little bit and still managed to turn out okay. I have a feeling Seattle's not getting a top pick.
Well, maybe
they'll get 5 or 6.
Well, but nonetheless, like I'm sitting there saying, okay, so let's say they're picking with the 5th overall pick, and it's from the Seattle Thunderbirds of the WHL or from the Everett Silvertips of the WHL. Deal. Yeah. Holy crap, that place is going to go nuts because it's already a local kid that they know.
And you know what? You're so close to Canada, you can host events in Seattle whenever you want. Imagine how the All-Star game draws in Seattle. Imagine how the draft draws in Seattle.
Do you know what would be a really good event for them to have to an extent? And it might not happen for a little while, but down the road, something that would probably be good for Seattle to host, given its proximity to that part of Canada. They would be a great destination probably for World Juniors down the road.
I was about to say they would be a phenomenal World Junior stop.
Yeah, I mean,
and if the NHL can work with the CHL and get World Juniors there next year or 2 years from now, or early,
there's a lot of things that are going to happen there. You know what? Because Buffalo has been this kind of hub because it's so close to Toronto that you can use that.
They're going to be Buffalo West.
I laugh using that word. They've been a hub for it because
that's
totally different vocabulary.
That's literally the only thing happening in Buffalo.
But Buffalo had a World Junior Championship where people came across the border from Toronto going, "I want to watch Team Canada play."
Oh yeah,
and they've hosted the other event that I think that Seattle could get down the road potentially if they want to do it. Buffalo's had the Combine for several years for that too, and if you can host the space. To let them showcase themselves. It's a great place to do it if you can, that legitimately could be the NHL, probably close to the NHL city where the WHL operates out of a lot. Because I think Buffalo and Toronto are that OHL, Quebec Major Junior Hockey League can operate like in relatively closeness with that type of stuff too. Like it's not a far trip for their prospects to go to Buffalo or Toronto or Montreal or whatever.
I think hockey is going to do very, very well in a city where it rains 320 days a year.
It's not a bad idea if you can,
That's what I'm saying. You're indoors.
Yeah,
what's dry? The hockey game.
That's for sure.
But either way, I don't know how we got onto Seattle, but I did want to mention one of the things that you mentioned about should the NHL be embarrassed about how good Vegas is?
Right.
One thing to mention here is they don't have to give a player to Seattle.
Yeah, that's
one of the things that came up.
I know why.
I specifically remember it being.
I know why, but
I specifically remember it being a story when they were in the conference finals. It was, oh, by the way, and also they don't have to give somebody up to Vegas or to Seattle rather.
That's going to be an even more interesting story either this year or next year.
Can you imagine if they didn't have that sort of protection in place and like Max Pacioretty gets plucked?
Well, right, but see what I'm saying is that's going to be a really interesting story if they win a cup in the next year or two. Like if they win it this year or they win it next year.
If they win it the year after they don't give a player up.
Well, that too.
It'll be a big story.
But I think it's going to be it's going to be interesting if they win it before they have to get to that point because of the fact that if they do and then they don't have to give somebody up from that team.
At that point, you're
like
a powerhouse,
every team,
right?
Like when Vegas came into the league, that was Pittsburgh. Marc-Andre Fleury was the guy who went from a championship team to expansion, and then somehow still made a Stanley Cup final the next
championship team. I think in a lot of ways,
but still, like Marc-Andre Fleury, who was granted a backup at the time, just gets plucked off of a championship roster that he started for like the first round or two. You know what I mean? Like
right. You played a lot of really important games for them,
right? In this team's success. And not only in their success, but overall, because like how many people at that point in time, 3 cups and
Marc-Andre Fleury is a legitimate Pittsburgh Penguins legend.
Right.
He's up there.
How many
he's
people
up there with
looked at
66, 68, and 87. He's in the conversation. He's not there. He's not, but he's there. He's in the conversation.
Well, and especially as a first overall pick as a goalie, because that's about as rare as it gets. Like you just don't find those guys. And yet he's the type of guy, like I look at him and I go, at that time, did people sit there and really think at some point in time, maybe they saw the beginning of the end at that point, but before that, do you think he's a lifetime player for them? I think you do at some point. Like this way.
I thought he was going the Henrik Lundqvist route.
Well, and that's the funny thing about where
the Rangers are may or may not be a career Ranger.
I mean, I think the easiest one so far with this is that Braden Holtby, I think, is now. Can you imagine if Lundqvist is no longer like at that point in time? If Lundqvist is no longer a Ranger, Fleury's no longer a Penguin, Braden Holtby's no longer a Capital, and there's all these moving parts. Like these guys who you looked like they were going to be fixtures of those teams for years and years to come.
JVR will be a Seattle Kraken. It's crazy.
Are we sure it's going to be JVR though?
It depends on what the no movement clause situation looks like.
No, I was going to say, are we sure it's going to be him, or are we sure it's going to be, I keep thinking, watch out for Shane Gostisbehere at some point in time, because if Gostisbehere is not legitimate, but if he's mildly still contributing like he has been in some of these games.
If you can get value for him, it might be a good time to trade him. Okay, so real quick before we get out of here, I'm going to read you the series. I just want a winner and games. Not a whole lot of thought, not a whole lot of analysis.
I gave most of them already, so it's fine. Let's just go ahead.
Vegas, Vancouver.
Vegas in 6.
I like Vancouver to continue the Cinderella run. Vancouver in 7.
I'm saying Vegas in 6. I think Vegas, because I do really get impressed by Vegas's overall performance. That being said, Vancouver is a good team. Watch out for them.
For sure. Colorado, Dallas. Dallas is up a game at time of recording, just for full transparency here.
I'm still sticking to my guns anyway. I'm saying Colorado in 6.
And I had Dallas in 7. I swear, I had it before yesterday.
No, I'm still sticking to my guns because, listen, I'm not going to change it just because of one game. Am I worried? No, am I worried about it? I am a little because of the fact that, let's just wait, somewhere down the road in this game, Philip Grubauer's hurt now and probably not coming back.
That certainly changes things.
That changes things. And I didn't see the whole game. I saw a good amount of it. Eric Johnson got hurt in the first period, came back in the second period, and I think then got hurt again.
Okay, and so they're in trouble, and your prediction looks a little shaky.
Right, and my worry about them is that, like, let's just say I pick them because of the top line. I love their top line. I do love parts of their depth, and I think a lot of it's been good. I worry about Cale Makar is such a good defenseman offensively. I worry about his defensive ability a little bit as you get further into the playoffs because you really have to be as tight as you can.
You have to be on point.
And he gets a little aggressive, and that would worry me.
You have Colorado in 6, but you're nervous about it?
Yeah, well, I'm nervous about it because I think also, like, you lost the top goalie and you lost one of your top defensemen who's more of a defensive defenseman. He can jump up on the play, but he's more of a defensive guy. Now I think if you're resting a lot of your hopes in Cale Makar defensively, he's still really young.
Dallas is going to exploit you. Yeah.
Right, like that's what I'm worried about. And Dallas's top line finally got clicking in that game 1 too, which is also why I'm worried. Like there was something about Dallas playing wide open hockey against Calgary for that entire series that I'm like, you can't play 6-5 against Colorado and expect to win.
No,
you just can't. And sure enough, they won game 1 5-3. So I don't know what to expect. But
they did their part.
It's really hard too because I do like there's parts of both of these teams I like. Like I really honestly could care less who comes out of that series because it won't disappoint me one way or the other. I think I'd like to see McKinnon get to a conference final though. I think the league needs it. Quite honestly,
I definitely could see that, and I think
given the fact that
McKinnon versus Vegas is some
given the fact that just about every other key superstar that everybody identifies with, there's no more Crosby, there's no more Ovechkin, there's no more Matthews, there's no McDavid. There, like the number of people who were knocked out even in just the qualifying round, but that now there's more. Like there's no Carey Price, like you know what I mean. Like you need a face, and McKinnon's the face.
And a lot of these premium faces that remain are in this Tampa-Boston series.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you got here? I'll go first on this one. I have Boston in 7.
Okay.
And if this series doesn't go 7, I'll be disappointed because I think that's what's best for the league. I literally don't care who wins. I want to watch 7 games of these teams beating the snot out of each other so the Flyers can pick up whatever scraps are left.
Right. I'm saying Tampa in 7, so we're on the opposite side, but I agree with you. First of all, this
it's
series
so up in the air. Who even knows?
It's so well. And see,
flip
here's the
a
thing.
coin.
What I do want it to come down to is exactly what we're going like differing on. We both said, "Oh, there will be a game 7." It's just we each have different winners for it, and it is a coin flip from there.
Imagine this goes to game 7 overtime. It could do it.
Oh, it could. And
it might go to multiple overtimes. We've seen Tampa play multiple overtimes this year.
Yeah, because that's what I want to do on the night before a potential Flyers-Islanders game 7.
I'll
sit
do
up
it
until all hours of the morning because that's probably more than like I've already looked ahead in the schedule and granted, all the things past game 4s are to be determined at this point. But
there's only 2 series in each conference.
But the Flyers and Islanders play game 6 on the same day that a game 7 of Tampa Boston would be. So you know that Tampa Boston's getting a night slot.
Okay, so the Flyers would go first. Okay.
Right. If there's a game 7, because a game 7 is going to take over anything.
But if the Flyers Islanders play game 7, it'll be the following night. Okay.
Right.
Because that's back to back.
But you know that a game 7 is going to take over a game 6.
Absolutely. That's
so game 6 is going to be 3 o'clock in the afternoon more than likely, and then you're going to have an 8 o'clock game 7. Should we buckle up and be ready to be up until 2 a.m. with something like that, possibly with the overtime? I mean, it's going to be a great series.
The nice thing is it's a weekend night, so it's fine.
Do you know what's really great, or what I'm excited about with that too? That series starts tonight, right as we drop the episode. It's going to be starting. I'm ready for that one. I'm ready to watch.
Definitely.
Because I think here's the thing about it too. Like someone turned around and even said something about the Flyers are going to play game 2 of their series on the same day that Boston's playing another game. Tampa's playing. And Tampa got the night slot, even though the Flyers are the 1 seed or whatever.
I think the Flyers are getting the fresh ice.
It has not, I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it honestly has to do with there's an entertainment value to this Boston Tampa series
that there is not in this
that's
Flyers Islanders series, more than likely.
Well, because you're going to get one set of this is going to be tight checking, neutral zone hockey, and the other one's going to be potentially wide open. Look at the number, goodness, look at the first lines for each team, and then tell me that it's not, that doesn't look like the All-Stars out there.
Right. That's definitely the case, and I definitely agree that that's probably the more entertaining value series if you're looking at it from the NHL's perspective. But yeah, so you have Tampa in 7, and I have Boston in 7.
Yeah.
Going over the Flyers series, I think we talked about it. I believe
we did a little bit with things. I said 7,
and I said Flyers in 6. So we both have the Flyers winning this one. I have it in 6. You have it in 7.
There is. I will fuel not my prediction, but I will fuel something on this with one thing, and it's a thought that.
Yeah.
Again, I was talking to my dad about it yesterday. We kind of leveled up on this too. Like it is very well could be the case. This might be the toughest series the Flyers play en route to the Stanley Cup final if they're going to get there.
Depending on what kind of war Tampa and Boston go through,
well, that was the other thing. That was part of my reasoning is because right now, as far as I'm
expecting that series to go long and be a battle.
Right, if you're looking at this possible long series between Boston and Tampa Bay, you want these two teams to just beat each other up in this series.
But if one of those teams beats the other in 5, all of a sudden the Islanders aren't the biggest challenge anymore, more than likely, assuming everybody gets through healthy.
I don't know, and there's a good reason for it. And Barry Trotz had a great answer in his press conference yesterday that I think is worth noting. Barry Trotz said something about, because somebody asked him, what's the difference between, or not the difference between, but is there a difference between getting to this point in the Carolina series from a year ago? Like, what do you learn from the Carolina second round series? Because it felt like everything just ran out of gas. And he turned around and said, well, we didn't have 9 days. We don't have 9 days off this time.
Right.
They got through that first round really quickly last year. And he's like, it's really hard. It's really hard to sit around for 9 days and then try to get it back going. He said, we've only had it's good that we get to take a day or two, get right back into this series. And we're going to play 4 times in 6 nights.
Yeah.
We're excited about that. So they're ready for that because they're ready for this. They're ready for this kind of series where the fact that they're playing so regularly is going to probably help both sides because you're either going to get
everybody gets in the rhythm.
I mean, I kept going. In fairness to your prediction, I kept going back and forth between 6 and 7 also because let's put it this way, I will have the same worry about this series that I did with the other one. That if you're not done in 6. Be worried about game 7,
especially if you're up 3-1. If it goes the same way it did,
well, sure, but for me, I need to see game 1. I need to see that the style is better. Like if your defensive style is still as good as it was against Montreal, and you're locking the team down, but you look more crisp on the offensive side, your execution is better, then I'll feel way more comfortable about the series. If they still look like they did against Montreal, and now you're expected to try to win 4 games against the Islanders like that, I don't know if I like your chances.
Who's a better goalie right now, Braden Holtby or Carter Hart? Right now.
Ooh.
Right now.
I'd say Carter Hart right now.
Okay. And that's why I have the Flyers in 6.
Okay.
And you know what? Before we get out of here, I'm going to hit you with the plugs here. Kevin, if you could lean to your right for a little bit for me.
Move over and I'll push the microphone out of my face.
And
there
you can find this video of this board on our YouTube. If you search YWT Podcast, we pop right up. We're also on Twitter at YWT Podcast. Kevin is at Kevin_Durso. You can find him on game day at Flyerdelphia and every other day at Sports Talk PHL. You can find the show on sportstalkphilly.com as well as everywhere else you can find your podcast, Apple, iTunes, Google, Spotify.
Yep.
I think we went through the process to be on Pandora. I don't know.
Oh, did we really? That'd be cool.
I think you can. I don't know if we have yet.
It doesn't
either
matter.
way.
Yeah.
One more question before we get out of here.
Okay. And then I'll say something really quick too, because just to go along with the plugs.
Does Jake Voracek get his revenge on Johnny Boychuk in this series?
I thought about this a little bit. First of all, Johnny
Boychuk
has to play.
WrestleMania.
He's got to play first before he actually
he
hasn't played in a little bit. Although they did say I don't know. I wonder if that's by choice, to be honest, because Barry Trotz said everybody's available.
I think they're just
the only guy who I know.
The
only guy who I know who was hurt for the Islanders at some point was Cal Clutterbuck. Okay. He was out for the last game, and Barry Trotz said that he was available. He was on the ice for practice, and that everybody should be a go for game 1. So nice. Take that for what is. So you're getting a fresh team for sure. I don't know if there's going to be revenge. I'll tell you what I liked better about the specific one about Jake Voracek.
Okay.
He looked really good in those last few games. He looked like he was hitting a new gear, which I think you're going to need.
He was starting to get in the groove.
And I really want to see him have that heavy involvement on the power play because that worked wonders in Game 5. And
Yes.
that, like you said, that might be an area of the series where I think that things could be a difference maker.
Yep.
All
right, what was your other
with
thing?
The plugs.
Yeah.
Keep following me on Twitter throughout the week. Probably going to be a busy week for me over on 97.3 as well.
I imagine it probably will be. Hopefully.
I would say starting with leading up to Game 1 on Monday for sure. Probably leading up to Game 1 on Monday. Probably post game after Game 2 on Wednesday because it's a 3:00 one.
Okay.
And then I don't know. It's a shame because of course the 12:00 game, which is a perfect one, comes in on a Saturday, which means that all of their normal original Saturday programming is probably going to be out the window. So I won't have anything to do with that.
And
you'll just have to hear me on here next week on the YWT podcast after we're done.
Well, I was about to say just a quick little programming note on our end. At the current moment, we have no live shows scheduled. That could change if we just decide to do one. So make sure to follow us on Twitter at YWT Podcast. You're good with it? That was your stuff?
Yeah, that was all I was just trying to say. Just keep listening for me there because I'll keep posting about it, and it'll be other times hear me as the series goes on before I'm on here again next week.
Exactly.
That may be.
And we can find those updates for you at Kevin_Durso over on Twitter. We will be back next week, same time, same channel.
4 games in.
We will be 4 games in. 1 week from now, Kevin, what is the series at? When we record next week's show, are the Flyers up 3-1? Is it 2-2? Where are we at here?
I'd like to come on here and say the Flyers are up 3-1.
I think the Flyers are up 3-1. I think we follow the same path that we did with this Montreal series.
I think I'd rather see it that way because then I'll feel good. Let's just say I'll stick to my guns on what I said. I said 7, so I'll say 2-2.
Sure, that makes sense. Well, make sure to watch.
Hate to be devil's advocate, but whatever.
No, I get it. But make sure to watch those games, and you can come back here next week, and we will be talking about them. So until then, we'll see you next week, folks.